Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. It was Sunday evening, and 26-year-old Pete was driving his wife Tina home from the pub. She was at a party with friends, called him for a ride, and he picked her up. She told him that she enjoyed catching up, shared some juicy gossip, and then immersed herself in something on her phone. She snorted in obvious disappointment. "Is something wrong, my love?" Pete asked, casting a quick glance at the petite 24-year-old brunette sitting next to him. Tina shuddered slightly. She didn't realize she had done it. "No. Well, not really," she explained hastily. "I was supposed to meet Emma for a drink on Thursday, but she just canceled." She looked at him and smiled. "Although you'll be fine with that, too." Pete smiled back, but she had already returned to her phone. At first, he was going to deal with this issue, but remembered some of his father's advice. When you are faced with a number of options, the first thing to consider is to do nothing. Compare all the likely results of your actions with this before deciding what is best to actually do. Pete Facebook's problem was that Emma had befriended him on Facebook last year to find out Tina's favorite perfume for Office Secret Santa, and he knew from her last Facebook post that she had just arrived in Lisbon for a long-planned 2-week break. There was no chance that she had any kind of arrangement with Tina. Why this lie? Tina started fidgeting in her seat. "My God, that last glass of cider went right through me. I really need to pee. Maybe I should stay somewhere? No, I think I can wait until I get home. But for God's sake, don't delay." She went back to her phone. When they entered, Tina rushed through the kitchen to the bathroom, dropping her phone on the granite countertop on the way. Pete adored his wife, but he really wanted her to take more care of her things. He had already replaced 3 screen protectors for her this year, and it was only June. He took the phone and turned it over to check the screen. Everything was fine. But what the hell happened? At the last second before the screen went to sleep, the image he caught a glimpse of was a profile page for some website called Infidelity, and he was sure that the thumbnail image was Tina, but with a different name in the profile. The rest of the evening passed in a depressed mood. Tina was on the phone, and Pete sat quietly thinking. Eventually, she stood up. "I have to go to the bathroom again, and I'm exhausted. I'm going to sleep. See you in the morning." She left him alone with his thoughts. Pete got up earlier than usual the next morning, and Tina had just left the bedroom when he was about to leave the apartment. "I didn't sleep well last night," he explained. "I thought I'd get up and leave early so I wouldn't bother you." He kissed her goodbye. He wasn't in a bad mood when he got to the warehouse where he ran the local distribution department, but he got hooked when he heard Jason yell, "Hey, bum, get your gay ass over here and help me clear this stack." Pete stopped, turned around, and walked back. "Jason, to my office, right now." Pete stormed into the office block and calmed down enough to ask Jenny, their receptionist, secretary, and, in fact, the heart of the business, to call security and ask someone to join him in the office as soon as possible. Jason arrived a few minutes later, followed by Dave, the most experienced security officer. Ex-military, straight as a die, hard as a nail. Pete nodded at Dave, then looked at Jason. "Jason, you're suspended. 1 week, no salary, and if I have any voting rights, you won't be reinstated." "For what the hell?" Jason exploded. "You've been warned too many times for bullying your colleagues. What I heard this morning was the last straw." "It was just fucking banter," Jason protested. "Bum, get your gay ass over here," Pete said. "This is aggravated harassment and I won't stand for it. Dave will escort you out of the grounds. Do not return until you are specifically told that you have been reinstated, and do not contact any of your colleagues to try to get them to cover for you." Dave spoke softly. "I served side by side with men who liked other men. They fought and bled and some died, just like the rest of us. Every one of them was a better person than you'll ever be, you chatty little piece of shit." Pete smiled as Jason slouched out, muttering to himself. He stopped smiling when he remembered the paperwork involved in firing and replacing even a useless jerk like Jason. After lunch, Pete called the pickup team to his office. After Jason left, there were only 3 of them left. He looked at Lee, whom Jason was making fun of. "Lee, I'm sorry you had to put up with this." He glared at the other 2. "Did it ever occur to you to challenge Jason to a duel after he bullied you?" Both looked confused but didn't say anything. He let them go and continued his work. It was 3 o'clock before he had a moment to look at the website he had noticed the night before. Infidelity, the screensaver read, a site for extramarital entertainment. His heart sank as he read on. A place where singles meet married men and women for a no-strings-attached bed. His heart felt like it had been ripped out of his chest. Real physical pain. He tried to log into the site, but there was no way to view it normally. Users had to register with a photo and pay for membership with a card. He couldn't risk his name or photo appearing on the site. He needed a plausible intermediary, a young, handsome avatar. In fact, he realized that he needed Lee. He left his office and went to the goods registration desk. The team didn't notice him at first. They worked together, quickly, quietly, and efficiently. He realized that they were doing twice as much without Jason. "Good. Lee," he called. They all looked up. "Lee, can you give me 10 minutes when you're done there?" Lee gave a thumbs up. At 5 minutes to 4, Lee knocked on the office door. "The guys said they would finish without me. I think they're trying to make amends for not standing up for me." Pete stood up. "Let's go. I'll buy you a quick pint of beer. I need to ask you a favor. Have you packed your things?" Lee nodded. 10 minutes later, they settled into a quiet corner of a local cafe in front of a couple of pints of beer. "Lee, I need to ask you something personal. I would like you to answer honestly, and when I'm done, you can send me, and I give you my word that there will be no consequences. All I ask is that everything said here tonight stays between us. First of all, you're certainly not gay, are you?" Lee lowered his head. "No," he said softly, his eyes filling with tears. "But I just don't know how to talk to women." "So," Pete suggested, "because you don't come to work every morning bragging about non-existent beds like others do. Jason decided that you're gay?" "Pretty much," Lee agreed. "I'm guessing you have a small family if you're that shy." Lee sighed. "The only child, Mom died young. Dad drank himself to death. I live with my grandmother now. She takes good care of me, but she never really taught me how to, communicate." Pete figured out how far he was willing to go. To hell with it. "Lee, I think my wife may be cheating on me, or at least preparing for it." He talked about the website and showed the screen on his phone. "I can't register as me, and there's no point in taking a picture of some guy from the internet in case Tina asks for another picture in a suit or at the gym or something like that. I'm asking you if you're ready to sign up and see if my wife can." Pete paused and took a deep breath. "If my wife asks you to use it." Lee leaned back, stunned. "Really? I hope I'm wrong, but I think she might have hoped to meet someone on Thursday, but the meeting fell through. If we put your profile on the site this week, I think you might be next in her line of sight. But what if she really wants to meet me? If that happens, all I ask is that you give her every chance to change her mind. If she decides to stay with you, make love to you, she's not my wife anymore. Do whatever you like. She's an amazing lover. If she's willing to let you take control of yourself, then make the most of it. I give you my word, I won't care then." Lee thought for 5 minutes. Pete sat quietly, not wanting to put the guy under any pressure. Eventually, Lee spoke up. "So will you help me post my profile on this site?" Tom nodded. "And I'll just register with my photo and pay with my card?" "Yes," Pete agreed, "and I'll pay you in cash. Then if your wife contacts me, you will help me with the correspondence." "That's exactly it. And if she offers to meet you, I'll even pay for some fancy clothes for your date." "And after I ask her if she wants to cheat on her husband, if she does offer to make love, will you not hold a grudge against me at work? I don't think I could do that if I were you. Lee, this has not happened yet, but we are saving up money to buy a house in which we will raise our children. If she uses you, she will never be the mother of my children, and I will try to get her out of my life. And if she doesn't contact me, then I'll help you become more confident in communication in general, introduce you to our friends, something like that. But I'm not going to help you use another man's wife. That's a line I won't cross, and neither should you." Lee looked thoughtful. "But your wife is fine, because if she decides to do this, you're finished." He shook his head sadly. "This must really suck, Pete." They finished their drinks and dispersed. Tina was making tea when Pete came home. "I'm sorry I'm late, sweetheart," he apologized. "I had to fire someone this morning and smooth some ruffled feathers this afternoon." She shook her head. "I can't complain. At your age, you're already doing so well as a manager. Our home savings are accumulating thanks to you, so don't apologize." She hugged him tightly. They ate, cleared the table, and sat huddled together on the couch, watching Netflix. When the movie ended, they looked at each other, grinned, and almost simultaneously said, "Early evening." No one found this strange, given recent events. In fact, hardly anyone noticed. Together, they filled out Lee's application for membership in Infidelity. Pete used Lee's phone to take a passable photo, trying to avoid any signs that they were in Pete's office. They even made sure that the geotags were disabled, just in case. They gave Lee the name Alexander, Alex for short, Hill. Alexander was his real middle name, and Hill was the name on his bank card. He was 19, 6 feet tall, well-built and fit from physical work. He accurately described himself as well-read and polite. He described his awkwardness with women and expressed the hope that in this more intimate setting, he would find women who would find his natural shyness endearing and help him overcome it. His ideal woman was between 20 and 26 years old, petite with long dark hair and brown eyes. Big breasts were not required, and he preferred the image of a sweet neighbor, rather than a woman with bee-sting lips and a lot of makeup. In fact, he, or rather Pete, described Tina. He stressed that he does not have a car, so he would prefer his meetings to be local, or a woman should be able to drive. He also made it clear that his accommodation is not suitable for love affairs, so any meetings are probably best held in hotels. Pleased with his efforts, Lee looked at his profile and decided that he was a better prospect than many other guys at work. Perhaps all he needed was to believe in himself. "Thanks, Lee. I appreciate it," Pete told him. Now they had to wait. The site's rules allowed only married users to browse the pages in search of partners to reduce the risk of exposing themselves as cheaters. "Of course. I just hope that I won't have any coincidences," Lee replied. "How long will you wait before you make sure that your wife is not planning to cheat?" Before Pete could answer, Lee's phone rang. Notification from Infidelity. A woman named Little Miss Annie approached him. His relief when he saw that it wasn't Tina evaporated when he saw Pete's startled expression. "What's wrong? This is a message from Annie, not Tina." "Lee, we used your middle name in your profile. My wife's name is Christina Annabelle. She was named after her grandmother, Annie." Lee read the message anxiously. He sighed. It was an automatic response, letting him know that one married subscriber perfectly matched his preferences. The message says that his data has already been transferred to her. The couple realized that this was the whole point. They knew Tina had an account, and Lee had just described her as his ideal woman. The problem was how Tina would react if she was really Little Miss Annie. That day, just after 4, Lee knocked on Pete's door. Pete called out to him and then felt sick at the sight of pity on the other person's face. "Little Miss Annie sent me a private message via the app about an hour ago." He handed over his phone. "Hello, cutie. It looks like you're a good guy, and your photo is so beautiful. I gave you access to my profile so you can see what I'm offering. I hope you like what you see because I get wet just looking at your picture. Send me a shirtless photo. Annie wants to see your skin. Write to me in person if you want to play." Pete looked up. Lee pointed at the screen. "Swipe up. This will take you to her profile. Please tell me it's not her." With shaking hands, Pete ran his finger up the screen. Little Miss Annie's profile page popped up, and Pete's whole world collapsed. Lee took a screenshot of the message and profile page and sent them to Pete's phone. Pete was distraught on the way home, but now a decision had to be made. Should he admit to her that he knew about her lies about meeting Emma and about the message she sent to Lee? If he did, how would he react if she claimed it was just an obscene drunken prank with girls and nothing really happened? If he didn't do anything, he would have to act as if nothing had happened until she met Lee. Was he such a good actor? In the end, he decided that confrontation was pointless. He wouldn't believe anything she said, and even if she promised it was a stupid one-time mistake, how could he trust her? No, her only chance at redemption was to give up the bed, and that would only make sense if she didn't know that she had already been exposed. He chose not to do anything. Pete never really understood how he got through that Tuesday night. He made up a story about Jason challenging his dismissal to explain why he might seem distracted. Tina didn't seem suspicious. Moreover, she seemed distracted herself, spending a lot of time checking her phone. At 10 minutes past 8, she announced, "Oh, that's good. Pete, Emma will still be able to come Thursday night. Do you mind if I meet her?" Damn, Pete thought. Lee has to send Annie a topless photo around 8. He also had to find out if she was available for a date on Thursday after work. If she refused, he would have informed Pete. In fact, 20 minutes later, Lee sent a message saying that he had been received with great enthusiasm. Pete sat and watched as his loving wife claims to have sent a message to Emma agreeing to meet on Thursday. But in fact, it was a message about meeting a stranger for a bed, and she did it when he was actually sitting in the same room. Her brazen behavior and lack of guilt confused him. Did she believe that she could live like this for the rest of her life, with the fact that he will never know, or did she just not care? The next day was a real nightmare. Lee showed Pete the photo he had sent, and Annie's enthusiastic and graphic response. Reading her message, it was obvious that she fully intended to brainwash Alex on Thursday night, and then return to her husband without caring about anything in the world. On Wednesday, Annie booked room 154 at a local Travelodge hotel. She gave Alex clear instructions on how to get there and what to say at the front desk. It wasn't like her first rodeo. Now it's time to act. Without doing anything, Pete learned almost everything he needed to know about his wife. If she pushes Lee away, then Pete will let her try to explain herself. Otherwise, it will be the end. After lunch, Pete found the warehouse manager. He explained that he had discovered that his wife was having affairs and intended to divorce her. To be fair, he used the expression "throw a fool," but his boss understood the idea and told him that the business would give him some respite while he sorted out his life. This day was spent on gov.uk website by filling out online forms to start the divorce process. He didn't need proof of infidelity to continue, but it was consistent with his sense of justice to refrain from submitting a completed application and a substantial payment, almost £600, until she actually uses Lee. After that, all he has to do is live apart for 20 weeks, and she will become his ex. That evening, he told Tina that he needed to do some paperwork, and it was true. He emptied their joint account and canceled 2 joint cards. They also had separate savings accounts, and he left them alone. He made sure the bills were paid and checked the terms of their apartment lease. 4 weeks' notice and an additional monthly rent if they left before the agreed rental period. He thought it was great value for money to get rid of a fool. On Thursday, Pete and Lee went shopping at lunchtime. Pete paid for new jeans, sneakers, a t-shirt, and a jacket for Lee. The fact that he was buying things to make Lee look good enough to make love to his wife was an irony that did not escape Pete. The day was disgusting. He almost threw up when Pete tried to eat the lunch he packed that morning. He checked that his phone was fully charged and arranged the images in his phone's gallery, then went down to the packaging department and took out some boxes. Tina sent him a text saying that Emma wanted to meet early for a snack. Pete could only imagine what Tina was looking forward to at the evening meeting. He replied that he was still trying to deal with Jason, so he would be home late. It almost killed him when he ended the message by wishing her a good time. Pete found Lee. But I'm going to say it anyway. My wife apparently is a complete fool. I have no idea how many men she's been through since we got married. I don't want to know. She's nothing to me now. You've done everything I asked you to do, so if you're using the wrong cow for evening training, go ahead. Lee looked at his boss. If I thought you still cared about her, in fact, I would have left. But he paused to think about it. It seems like karma that the fake identity that we have created is what gives you the ultimate proof that she has been debauching behind your back. That's another question, Pete. The guys here are still muttering about my modesty. I'm going to go out tonight and ask her if I can take a picture of us making love to show the guys at work. You say they brag about non-existent beds. I'll show you the pictures first, but I want those bastards to shut up. Pete just shrugged. He didn't care. They spent a few more minutes planning and then went back to work. At 5:45 that evening, Pete parked his company pickup truck on a side street near his apartment. He pulled on an old hoodie that he kept at work and went to stand at the bus stop, from where he could clearly see the front door. Just after 6, a taxi pulled up and Tina got in. Pete turned his back, ostensibly to check the bus schedule, when the car drove past him. He took the pickup truck and parked near his house and then entered. The apartment seemed lifeless, like an abandoned film set. It looked like an uninhabited house. First of all, Pete checked that the battery in his digital camera was fully charged. Then he went around each room, photographing the contents. Everything. Furniture, books, paintings, and decorations. Then he took his clothes out of the closet and drawers. Everyday items went into his suitcase. Everything related to Tina, such as his wedding suit or the funny Christmas sweater she bought him, he threw on the bed. Then he went about his household chores. The things that were given to him were on the kitchen table, except for gifts from Tina, which were on the bed. His books were on the table, unless they were her gifts. Within an hour, he divided the possessions of 2 people who promised each other to grow old together. 3 fucking years. he thought as he took the last of his things out of the bathroom locker. She barely lasted 3 fucking years. He noticed a missed message from Lee on his phone. "I'm so sorry, Pete. I only have a minute while she's in the bathroom. I tried, but she just laughed and said that what hubby doesn't know won't hurt him." "It's not your fault. Thanks for trying," Pete replied. His heart broke and he barely remembered the next 10 minutes. Eventually, the tears stopped and he went back to work. Everyday items were put in one box and basic necessities in another. Initially, he wondered where he would store all his belongings. When he looked at the 2 boxes and 2 suitcases that were all that was left of his marriage, he realized that most of it would fit under the single bed in his father's bungalow. He had 2 more things to do. Tina, like many women, kept the box as a keepsake. She had all the postcards Pete had ever sent her, tied with a blue ribbon. Birthday, anniversary, Christmas, and Valentine's Day cards. Pete ran them through a paper shredder and scattered the fragments all over the bed. He did the same with the postcards she sent him, and then tore up the postcards she kept from family and friends, accepting an invitation to their wedding. He left an almost empty box on the bedside table. The last thing was their wedding photo on the living room wall. He carefully placed it on the kitchen countertop, and then carefully applied a sharpened screwdriver to the glass and hit it sharply with a hammer. Cracks were spreading from the impact. Perfect. He loaded up the pickup and drove off, dropping his key in the mailbox. By 9 o'clock, he was at his father's bungalow, packing up his belongings. He told his father a watered-down version of Tina's infidelity and promised to tell him the whole story in time. "I'm expecting a lot of drama tonight," he told his father, "and I'm not going to ask you to lie for me, so I'm not staying here, and I'm not going to tell you where I'm going to stay. This way, no one will be able to intimidate or accuse you of getting involved in this case. Don't let them use your phone to contact me, and don't agree to send messages. If Tina or her parents try to drag you into this, just tell them that I will gladly block your number just to protect you." "Are you sure you're doing the right thing, son?" his father asked him. "I followed your advice and let the situation develop until it became obvious what I had to do. If I had reacted too soon, I would never have known what she was capable of." Father and son hugged, and Pete left. At about 10 minutes to 10, Pete was sitting in the small bed and breakfast room he had booked that morning when he received another text from Lee. "I'm watching from the hotel window. She's getting into her taxi now. I'm going straight home like a good girl," she said. "Damn it, I'm so sorry. Don't regret it." "At least now I know," Pete replied. He entered his completed divorce application, added his electronic signature, and entered his credit card details for payment. Pete took a deep breath and clicked Submit Application. He logged into Facebook and changed the status of his relationship to divorced. Then he went to his home page and in response to, "What's on your mind?" he texted, "My ex-wife thinks it's okay." He attached a screenshot of her infidelity profile and changed his feelings status to broken. Tina wouldn't notice it right away since she didn't have a Facebook account. She relied on Instagram. He was pretty sure that one of her buddies would eventually tell her that she had been exposed. He looked at his watch. 10 o'clock. He called Tina's father. "Hi, Pete. Why are you calling at this hour? Everything is fine?" "Listen, Eddie, there's no time to explain. Tina is on her way home and will be there in 10 minutes or so. I think she's going to be upset and she's going to need someone around. You and Janet should go now and call me when you get there. Then we can talk." "What's going on, Pete?" "Eddie, just do it." Pete hung up the phone. Pete leaned back in his chair and considered the pain he was going to inflict on Tina's parents. Eddie was looking forward to becoming a grandfather, and he would have been a damn good grandfather. "Not for my kids," Pete thought sadly. Janet was a sweet woman who was trying to fill in the gap left after Pete's birth mom died when he was a teenager. 7 minutes later, Pete's phone rang. "Okay, we're at your front door. What the hell is going on?" Eddie was getting as angry as he was scared. "Call me when Tina gets here and I'll explain everything. But don't worry about her. She wasn't hurt or anything. It's just so damn hard. But you have to be there for her." Pete hung up the phone again. It wasn't long before Pete's phone rang again. "All right, Pete. Tina is paying for a taxi right now. So, for the last time, what the hell are you playing at?" Pete's mouth was dry. He couldn't speak. "I'm sorry, Eddie. Although the fuck knows why I'm apologizing. Ask Tina where she's been." "Pete, what's going on? Just ask her, Eddie. Just ask her where she's been." Eddie could be heard asking where she had been. Pete, Tina says you know where she's been. She told you. She was walking with Emma. Eddie, Emma is in Portugal. She stayed there for a week and won't be back for another week. So ask Tina again. Where was she? Now Eddie was getting angry. Someone was using him, and he wasn't even remotely happy about it. He got in touch again. Tina said that she actually met with the company from the office, but she didn't want to tell you because there were some guys with them, and she didn't want to make you jealous. She guarantees that nothing has happened. She regrets that she lied. How many people were there, Eddie? Another pause. She says there were about a dozen of them, but they were all in the pub together. I know it sounds bad, but she swears that nothing happened. Is that all, Pete? She was stupid. She knows she shouldn't have lied. What else? I'm so sorry, Eddie. Ask her if room 154 at the Travelodge can really accommodate 12 people. There was a long pause and worried voices. Come inside, Pete told him, and call me back when you open my next message. Pete opened his phone's picture gallery and sent Annie's profile screen to Eddie's phone. 2 minutes later, Eddie called back. Pete could hear Tina sobbing in the background. What are you showing me, Pete? He could hear Janet begging for this to be a mistake. Eddie, Tina has to tell you the truth. It's not fair that I'm the one who's dumping this on you. Tell her I can keep sending you photos all night until she stops lying. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't stop crying. Pete sent a screenshot of the message Annie sent to Alex. He returned to the bell. Eddie, Tina created this profile a few months ago. I just recently found out that she posed as Little Miss Annie on an infidelity website to meet men for bed. This is the message she sent to her last boyfriend. She sent it when I was in the same room. She pretended it was for Emma. She sent this message, looked at me, and smiled. That's how much she respects me. That's where she was tonight, and everything she's told you so far has been a lie. Tell me, Eddie, if you were in my place, could you forgive her? Start a family with her? Cheerfully going to work, not knowing who she's going to make love to while you're gone. So, I'm sorry, but I needed you to be there to show her this. I can move on, but she'll still be your daughter. You're going to have to put up with it because soon she's going to be a single woman and she's never going to be my problem again. Put me on speaker, please. Janet, take Tina to the kitchen. Show her the photo. Ask her if she knows what it means. Pete waited, imagining the scene in his house. He heard crying, and then Tina's mom's voice. She says she's sorry that she made you so angry that you broke the wedding photo. She says she never wanted to hurt you. Pete shook his head. She doesn't understand yet. Tell her to take a closer look at the picture. Where is it broken? There was a momentary pause in the conversation. Then Janet spoke again, over the sound of sobbing in the background. Now she understands. She broke your heart. That's why you broke the photo. She just keeps saying that she never wanted to hurt you. Did she ever want to hurt me? Well, that was easily avoided. She might not have to pay to register on the adulterer's website. She didn't have to make love to strangers. Not hurting people is not rocket science. It just needs you not to do hurtful things. But my wife? Tonight she laughed with her lover and told him, what hubby doesn't know doesn't hurt him. Did she ever want to hurt me? No, she just didn't care. Never mind, we're almost done, Janet. I'm sorry, but there are only 2 more things to do. Take her to the bedroom and ask her if she understands what the things on our bed mean. This time, it's Eddie's voice. Tina is on the verge of hysteria. Janet tries to calm her down. Tina says that everything on the bed is things that are special to the 2 of you. You left all the things that remind you of her. We don't understand what kind of shredded paper is. It's all right, Eddie. Show her the box. Ask her what used to be there. Pete heard Eddie deliver the message and then a scream of pain as Tina finally realized how deeply she had hurt him. What the hell did you do? Eddie asked, shocked. I've never seen anyone in such a state. Eddie. All she said at our wedding was to cherish, love, honor, and keep only each other. Alas, it was pointless for her. It's only been 3 fucking years. We've been saving up to buy a house and raise our kids, your grandchildren, and how does she respect me? Using strangers she finds on the internet. All the postcards she sent me that said how much she loved me. They are meaningless. They are lies. Therefore, I destroyed them, because they no longer had any value or meaning. My postcards to her, the replies to our wedding invitations, it's all just so damn pointless to her. Eddie struggled to get the words out. His voice was hoarse with emotion. He tried to shout over his daughter's screams and his wife's sobs. We didn't know, Pete. We never suspected. I can't explain, and I won't try to make excuses for her. I know, Eddie. You and Janet are not to blame for Tina's choice, and I'm so sorry that I put you through this, but she should have realized what she did, and you should have been there for her when she did it. We're almost done. Then you can take her home and try to cure her. She's just sick. She smiled at me when she texted a stranger asking for a bed. This is wrong. You need to cure her. But in the future, I'll only talk to you or Janet. Not with her. Never with her. Not after what she did to me. Pete sent a last message with a link to their divorce petition. Then he turned off his phone and started crying. Part 2. Tina's confession. My real name is Christina Annabelle, but everyone calls me Tina. Well, not quite everything, but I'll explain it later in my story. I will not give my last name. My father says he's been dragged through the mud so much that it can't get any worse, but I won't risk making the situation worse. I've done enough damage already. I am quite pretty, 5'2" and tall, slim, with beautiful C-cup breasts, short dark hair, and brown eyes. I'm 25 years old and I recently got divorced. I've been consulting since July, and my therapist recently suggested that telling my story honestly would help me come to terms with the consequences of my actions. It started around this time last year when my colleague Sophia asked me for a favor. My initial response was rather restrained, not that we were particularly close. Anyway, she said that she and her partner John were in a bad position, and she decided to date other men. She wanted her friend to provide her with an alibi for the time of her dates. It was my first missed opportunity. If I had told her to fuck off like the other girls did, then I would still be married. But I didn't, so it's my fault, not hers. Although I still fucking hate that fool for coming to me. So in the absence of a direct refusal, she kept pestering me, saying that all she needed me to do was agree if John ever asked if we were dating. I didn't know her partner, and Sophia said he was acting like a jerk and deserved it, so I said okay. Why? Why did I agree to lie to someone to help her cheat on her partner? I have no idea. Even if she was my best friend, I should have said no. It seemed to me that I was better brought up, so I failed both as a daughter and as a wife. Sophia kept me informed of her affairs, and despite my doubts, I was intrigued. How did she find these men without going to the club to get them? John would have noticed it, of course. So I asked her. I've already lost count of how much I screwed up. What a fucking fool I turned out to be. So, excited that I had shown interest, she took out her phone and logged into this website, infidelity.com it was called. And she told me how people in relationships can register on the site to find singles for a bed without any conditions. Then she grinned and said, unless you really want to use the site. I was disgusted, partly because such a site existed, and partly because someone I knew might even think about using it. But then a couple of times a week, she showed me guys who matched her profile. Some of them were really cute. I asked her if she was worried that John would find out somehow. No, she said. Participants in relationships have personal profiles, and they disclose them to singles only if they want to keep track of the match. So if a single guy says he wants to meet a tall, blue-eyed blonde in her 30s within a 30-mile radius, I'll get a notification. I can check his profile, and if I'm interested, I can send him a message. Even if someone from John's family or friends had been on the site and turned out to be suitable, I could have just ignored them and they would never have known that I was there. By mid-March, Sophia had made love to 6 different men and was bragging to me about each of them. She never mentioned it to anyone else in the office, although I think a couple of older women suspected something. One even took me aside and suggested that I distance myself from Sophia a little, but I ignored it. Clever, isn't it? By mid-April, I began to be intrigued by the type of responses I could get if I signed up. It wasn't that I was unhappy with Pete, my husband. I was just wondering. And after reading what I just wrote, I realized that not only did I make it clear what a self-obsessed fool I was, but it seems that I still am. Heck, I started this story by writing about what happened in February last year, and now I've got to April, and this is the first mention of my poor husband. What? I'm going to have to take a break now. I can't see the keyboard well enough to continue. Everything is fine. Now I've pulled myself together. It's just that I keep bursting into tears when I think about Pete, our plans, and what I did to him. Pete was my husband, tall, strong, smart, hardworking, much more beautiful than he imagined, and a wonderful lover. That's what's so damn crazy. If he was a loser in bed, maybe, just maybe, I would have some excuse. That would be a shitty excuse, but I don't even have that. He's 27 now. I didn't send him a birthday card this year. Partly because I no longer know where he lives, although I could send a postcard home to his father, but mainly because I know he would tear it to pieces and probably send the pieces back to me to emphasize his point. I deserve it. Anyway, how would I sign it? I love you, Tina. So, you've already guessed it. By mid-April, I had signed up, paid for a subscription, and created a profile. Little Miss Annie, from Annabelle, my middle name. Mom wasn't happy about it when she eventually found out about everything. I remember that her exact words were, "Did you dare to use the name I gave you in memory of my mother to find bedfellows?" Until that moment, I had never heard her swear in my life, and she cursed me twice in the same sentence. Obviously, I'm not a golden child anymore. It's equally obvious that I've never been one. Of course, I only signed up to see what matches I would get, or at least that's what I was trying to convince myself of. As my dad later pointed out in detail, most people don't pay £30 for a subscription out of idle curiosity. He's right, of course. I can't tell you exactly when it happened, but by that time I think I had already decided to make love to a stranger to see what it felt like. Was I being reasonable or what? Inevitably, within a few days, I received a notification from the site. A single man in his 30s indicated preferences that matched my profile. I was terrified and excited at the same time. Up to this point, it was a game. Nothing happened. It was just a stupid joke. I didn't take cheating seriously. I loved my husband, and we saved up for the perfect house to raise our perfect children. But it doesn't hurt to take a look at this guy's profile, does it? His profile picture showed a handsome guy. Not as handsome as Pete, but older and more mature. He wrote that his name was Eric, and he was doing some kind of consulting work in the area, and he had neither the time nor the desire to meet women in pubs or clubs. He wrote that if there are any pretty married women who would be willing to meet him at his hotel for a straight bed without commitment, expectation, or drama, let him know. Until then, I could step back, delete my account, and count my blessings. Instead, I sent a message to Eric and shared my profile. Why? I'll tell you later. He must have liked what he saw because he sent a reply message the same day. Damn it. Annie, you're just lovely. I'd love to see you naked. Any night this week after 6. Choose one. If you don't want to be seen, I'll have food and drink delivered to our room. It's stupid now that I think about it. Pete loved me, respected me, indulged all my desires, and I was sitting in a toilet stall at work and wiping a wet spot on my panties because a guy I'd never met wanted to use me. It was probably then that I mentally separated Tina and Annie. Tina was a devoted and respectable working wife. Annie was an uninhibited wild child. Or as I prefer to think of her now, a fool. Don't get me wrong, I'm not claiming that I have some kind of multiple personality disorder as an excuse. Pete explained to me that, as a boss, he adopted the image of a tough person at work in order to treat employees as subordinates, not as friends. At home, he was just Pete. I took on the image of Annie to use Eric, and I did it. At home, I was just Tina, at least at first. The next two guys were almost the same. I can't even remember their names. I think one of them was named Craig, or maybe Gary. It was still pretty exciting, but a little flatter than the first time. So I tried to add a little more excitement the next 4th time. Yes, he was the penultimate. I've only done it with 5 guys, including Alex. I just showed a draft to my therapist. Why did you only say that? She asked me. Are you implying that you are somehow less unfaithful than someone who was in double digits? Did you fall short of the target figure? Maybe 100? If you hadn't been caught, were you going to stop there for just 5? I will start again, this time without embellishing my betrayal with the word only. Yes, he was the penultimate. I'd already done it with 5 guys, including Alex, before Pete caught me. I didn't even think about stopping. I suppose if Pete had only challenged my lie about meeting Emma, I might have changed my mind, but probably not. I think I would just be more careful. I was caught up in the thrill of feeding Annie love, but I had to raise the stakes to keep the excitement going. Pete never knew about the first 3 because I did all the preparations in his absence or when I was at work. It was different with number 4. I used Pete as a prop. Right. If I could, I would only contact him in the presence of Pete at all. Are you judging me yet? Have I convinced you and everyone what a complete fool I am? Believe me, no matter how harshly you judge me, I know that I am 10 times worse. It's true. I was actually trying to make Annie's game more exciting by chatting with my bed buddies while Pete was around. Whether it was in the car, watching TV, once even in bed. So I met Jake, which Pete didn't know or suspect. He wasn't great. In fact, it was a waste of time. However, it was big enough that I was tempted to give him another chance, so we set up another meeting. Jake texted me when Pete was driving me home that Sunday. Apparently, his firm needed him to take over the contract in Scotland as soon as possible when the current project manager suddenly fell ill and Jake canceled our meeting. Pete noticed my reaction, and I made up a silly story about Emma canceling our party. It never occurred to me that they were both on Facebook and that Pete knew she was in Portugal. That's why scammers always get caught. It doesn't matter how smart you think you are. Eventually, a mistake or a pure coincidence will ruin your life. As far as I remember, Sophia screwed up in the end too. Despite the fact that by September she and John had solved their problems, in her words, she was still making dates. One evening, she was sitting in a pub with friends when John returned from the toilet and, intending to come up behind her to unexpectedly hug her, looked over her shoulder and caught her texting with a guy which said how much she was going to use him. Apparently, it didn't go very well. He grabbed her phone to make sure he read the message correctly and then read the rest. I wasn't there, but apparently he threw the phone on the floor and stepped on it, smashing it. When she jumped up to try to calm him down, John slapped her and left. Looking back, I think it proved that Pete loved me more than John loved Sophia. Pete made sure I understood how devastated I made him feel, and made sure Mom and Dad were there to help me after I learned my lesson. If he had just left, I would have lied to them, and they deserved better than my lies. I can't thank him enough for that now, not that I felt that way at the time. Sophia, she just brushed it off. She didn't learn anything. I still fucking hate her. I was a little tipsy that Sunday night and didn't really notice that Pete was quieter than usual. Now it's obvious that he was wondering why I lied about the canceled party. He got up early the next morning too, but I was so damn self-absorbed that I didn't think about it either. Although Monday evening was pleasant. He had a shitty day at work, although I didn't realize it at the time, mostly because of his wife. So after tea, we snuggled down on the couch and watched a movie together, then went to bed and made love. He was so gentle and loving. Oh, damn it, I miss him so much. Oh, sorry, I needed to go for a walk. The neighbors don't even comment now when they see me walking to the park with tears streaming down my face. On Tuesday, the big unraveling began. Later, I will explain how I know a little about this side of the story. In any case, I received a message from the Infidelity app that the preferences of the new member fully correspond to mine. His profile picture showed a handsome-looking young guy, and his biography implied that he was a virgin looking for a married woman who would show him what was what. I wasn't going to wait until I got home to answer this, so I texted him almost immediately to tell him that I was very, very interested. I told him I wanted to see his body and gave him access to my profile page. Pete was very quiet all Tuesday evening, although I didn't pay much attention to it. I just assumed that the jerk he fired was causing problems. A normal wife might have asked. I, on the other hand, was waiting for some random guy to send me a topless photo. Alex sent me a message around 8 o'clock. It was so hot. This pumped-up 19-year-old virgin wanted to meet me on Thursday, and I read his message and imagined running my hands over his perfect abs while my husband was sitting right there. That was then. Now I remember that moment as the greatest act of betrayal, even worse than actually using Alex. I feel sick just reading this last passage. I sent Alex my enthusiastic reply and described in detail what his acquaintance with the bed would look like. Now I know that Pete saw this message, and I understand why he left me like this. Even now, my hands are shaking when I try to imagine how he must have felt when he read the message I sent while sitting next to Pete. What happened next? I looked at Pete, smiled, and told him that Emma's plans had changed, and a meeting on Thursday was possible again. I was so excited that it was only in hindsight that I realized that shortly after that, Pete got the message and went to bed early. Obviously, I wasn't even pretending to wonder why. I barely saw Pete on Wednesday night. It must have been when he changed all our banking transactions. I was sitting and watching TV, probably deciding which outfit would be most appropriate for my first virgin bedfellow. Then came Thursday. I was so damn excited that I texted Alex to see how early he could meet me. Then I sent Pete a text saying that Emma and I had decided to go out for tea early. Of course, he was looking at her FB page where she is visiting Pena Palace, located a few hundred miles away. God only knows what he thought when he read my message, and I can't even imagine how much it must have hurt him to add, "have a good time," to his reply. I'm not going to describe my date with Alex in detail. He was the sweetest and best lover of the five. He was also bigger than the first four. At the time, I thought it was nice of him to worry about my husband. Even now, I know that no matter how much he wanted to use me, he really wanted me to leave. But I didn't do that. I laughed and said, "What hubby doesn't know won't hurt him." It was true. Only hubby knew, and it hurt him. Very strong. I left around 10 o'clock at night with some stupid remark about going home like a good girl. I was surprised to find Mom and Dad waiting outside when I got to the apartment. Damn it. Is Pete all right? That was all I could think about. If he had been hurt while I was debauching, I would never have forgiven myself. To tell the truth, he was actually hurt, but that was precisely because I was fornicating. Anyway, Dad met me and asked where I was. I told him the story I had prepared about the evening with Emma. I wondered why he repeated it on the phone. Then he said Pete knew Emma was away, so where was I really? I came up with an excuse about a corporate party for about 12 people in a pub. Dad was confused, but he asked me if room 154 could accommodate a dozen people, and I realized Pete knew everything. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I felt dizzy, and the next thing I remember, I was crouched in the street, vomiting, while my parents were trying to figure out what the hell had just happened. Dad opened the apartment door with his spare key. Mom, still confused, stood holding me while Dad looked at his phone. "What the hell am I looking at?" he said. I was afraid to think. Mom kept asking, "Eddie, what's going on?" But Dad didn't answer. I think he understood, but he couldn't accept it and couldn't bring himself to tell Mom what he was thinking. He called and put the phone to his ear. "Pete, what am I looking at?" He listened and stared at me, his confusion replaced by disbelief and disappointment that his little girl had betrayed her husband. Dad put his phone on speaker, and Mom kept asking him, begging him to tell her what was going on. We heard Pete's voice. "Janet, take Tina to the kitchen, show her the photo. Ask her if she understands what that means." Mom took me to the kitchen, even though I could barely move my legs. There was our wedding photo, the one that hung on the wall of our living room. She was lying on the dining table. The glass was broken. I told my mom that I know I made him so angry that he broke the photo, but I never wanted to hurt him. He told my mom to make me watch it again. Then I realized all the cracks radiated from one point, from his chest. My husband showed me in our wedding photo how his heart was broken. What could I offer? What was my excuse? All I could say was, I didn't mean to hurt him, tell him that I never meant to hurt him. But now it was obvious that Pete knew about infidelity, about little Miss Annie. He even knew that what hubby doesn't know won't hurt him. I heard his voice when he told my mom. Did she ever want to hurt me? No, she just didn't care. It wasn't true. I really cared about him. At least that's how I convinced myself. I just never believed that he would ever find out. I was so stupid. Pete told Mom to take me to the bedroom, then we were almost done. Mom and Dad both had to help me. My legs could barely hold me. Then I saw our bed, the bed where we had made love just a couple of nights ago. It took me a moment before I realized, and then my world fell apart. Everything that meant anything to my husband and me was there, not torn or damaged in any way. That would be a manifestation of anger. No, it's just that everything that was special to us as a couple was abandoned. Abandoned, like I left him for a meaningless bed with strangers. I tried to speak, to explain, but I couldn't. I cried, howled, mumbled, could barely breathe, and made incoherent noises. True, we didn't understand why everything was covered in shredded paper, but that was the last of my worries until I heard Dad ask Pete about it. "Tell her to look in the box," Pete said. It was every postcard we've ever exchanged. I kept them in my memory box. Christmas, birthdays, Valentine's Day, anniversary cards, every card we ever gave each other with the inscription, "I love you." He tore to shreds because obviously I never loved him, and he couldn't love me anymore. That's when I broke down. I could hear Dad talking to Pete for a few more moments, but none of the words made sense anymore. I don't remember anything after that. I woke up around midnight. Mom must have moved the bed to make room for me, and they were picking up my clothes, talking quietly to each other. I took a deep, shuddering breath when I came to my senses, and they quickly came over to support me. "Hush, baby," Mom said. "It's over now. You're coming home with us. We'll talk tomorrow." At least they were there for me. They loved me enough to give it to me. We actually talked the next day when I was awake, but they gave me Friday to pull myself together. However, The conversations that began on Saturday were anything but comfortable. They made their feelings very clear. I didn't like it, but they weren't wrong. The list of things I messed up was awfully long, and they didn't hesitate to point out every single item. In fact, I was lonely, homeless, emotionally broken, an adulteress. My older sister called me to say that she had just seen Pete's FB update, and she also generously shared her opinion of me. It was Saturday afternoon before Dad showed me his divorce application. When I stopped shouting that I didn't want a divorce, I wanted Pete, Mom intervened. After she finished expressing her anger that I had used her late mother's name to refer to my fornication, she made it clear that I had made my choice on my back and on my knees. Pete will never look at me again without wondering who I'm using next, so I just have to get over myself. I really pissed her off. My parents insisted that I return to work on Monday. They called on my behalf on Friday to say that I was unwell. I drove past Pete's office, making a 2-mile detour, every day for 3 weeks to try to see him, tell him how sorry I was, apologize to him, beg him to take me back. I do not know how Dad found out about this, but he was beside himself with anger. "Leave the poor guy alone," he attacked me in a rage. "Haven't you done enough with him already? If he can ever meet you again, which I doubt, it should be on his terms." Dad had never, ever talked to me, well, to anyone like that before. The reality and finality of the consequences of my decisions became clear to me. My marriage is over. How could it be any other way? 3 weeks later, I started consulting with a therapist. Time passed. It was December, and I was shopping for Christmas gifts for Mom, Dad, and Sue when I saw a young man looking at me. He was holding hands with an attractive young woman, but they were wrapped in scarves, and I didn't recognize any of them. He spoke to the girl. She nodded and headed for one of the nearby kiosks. He came up to me and, realizing why I didn't recognize him, unfolded his scarf. "Alex," I gasped. "No, actually, I'm Lee." He smiled a little sadly. "But you're not Annie either, are you?" "When did you find out?" I asked quietly. "When Pete went from your first message to Alex to your profile." He grimaced. He was honest with me at work, and in return I agreed to post myself on this obscene website. I saw his world crumble when he saw who you really were. He shook his head. "Is he still talking about me?" I asked hopefully. "No, or at least not in front of me, but we're not really that close. He's still my boss, and he doesn't seem to hate me for what you and I did, but we're not friends." Just at that moment, a young woman joined us with 3 mugs of hot chocolate. She handed one to me. "This is Vicky, my girlfriend," Lee introduced us. "Tina, Vicky knows who you are, so you can speak freely." I was shocked. "Did you tell her? That's it?" He put his arm around her shoulders. "You've taught me a lot. Some of this is good, some is a lesson in what not to do. Vicky has benefited from the good moments." The girl giggled, blushed with embarrassment, and nudged him with her elbow. She was gorgeous. He was a stud. I hoped they had succeeded. At least they understood where the deception had taken me. Was it useful for them in some way? I was comforting myself. We found a bench nearby, sat for 10 minutes, and chatted. Lee had seen a pretty blonde waiting for Pete a couple of times when he left work. Lee had no idea if Pete's relationship with this blonde was serious. I hope she's better, more loyal than me. Vicky sat in stunned silence while I explained how my spiral of deception began. "But you had so many chances to stop," she whispered. "Why did you risk everything for a meaningless bed?" I've been thinking for a while. The corny answer is that I wanted to see what it was like, and I didn't believe I would get caught. I paused to observe their reaction. I would sacrifice a limb to fix the stupid things I've done. I lost everything that was important to me because of a handful of meaningless beds. We finished our drinks and said goodbye. They left and I went back to my shopping. So for those of you who need closure, here is the final summary. Pete is dating someone. I hope she's nice. Lee is a confident young man with a beautiful girlfriend. Vicky has a sweet, experienced lover. My older sister thinks I'm a stupid little fool. My dad is trying to come to terms with the fact that his little girl was acting like a fool. My mom is still offended by how I disrespected her mother's memory. And me? I'm trying to rebuild my relationship with my family. I found out that the scammer's answer to the question is, "Why did you do that?" Incorrect. It's usually because I can. But you can't, not indefinitely. Karma, just like me. So I'm officially divorced and trying to make my new life work. There's a new guy at work. One of the girls says she thinks he's going to ask me out. If it's because he thinks I'm easy to spin, I won't go. If it's just because he wants to get to know me, you know better, then I'll go. And if he asks me out on a second date, I'll tell him the truth. I was selfish and stupid, and I want to be better than I was because I don't want to. I can't be responsible again for causing so much pain to so many people. Never again. I'm not going to take him any further without telling him what I was. I just hope that one day I can convince someone that I'm a better person now. What about Annie? I threw everything I wore when I was unfaithful into a dumpster: shoes, clothes, underwear, everything else. I threw my phone, the one I used to betray my husband, from above. Even the SIM card is destroyed. Now I have a new number. All our household waste goes to a waste recycling plant located outside the city. I got permission to stay at home on Wednesday morning, so I waited and then watched a garbage truck drive down our street. I watched as our dumpster with Annie in it emptied into the gaping mouth at the back of the car. Fuck you, Annie. Good riddance, I thought. Then she stood there while the car continued its journey to the incinerator. I burned that fool.